Hi everyone, welcome back to Bible in a Year. My name is Natalie and today we are on day 287. I am so happy that you're here today and I hope your day is going fantastic. We are going to be reading out of 2 Kings chapter 4, Ezekiel chapter 42, James chapter 5, which means we are going to be finishing the book of James today. And then we're going to close out our day with Psalm 145, but only verses 14 through 21. So let's not waste any time and get into 2 Kings chapter 4. Now a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. You know that your servant feared Yahweh. Now the creditor has come to take for himself my 2 children to be slaves." Elisha said to her, "What should I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" She said, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a pot of oil." Then he said, "Go borrow empty containers from your neighbors. Don't borrow just a few containers. Go in and shut the door on you and on your sons, and pour oil into all those containers, and set aside those which are full." So she went from him and shut the door on herself and on her sons. They brought the containers to her, and she poured oil. When the containers were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another container." He said to her, "There isn't another container." Then the oil stopped flowing. Then she came and told the man of God. He said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest." One day, Elisha went to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she persuaded him to eat bread. So it was that as often as he passed by, he turned in there to eat bread. She said to her husband, "See now, I perceive that this is a holy man of God who passes by us continually. Please, let's make a little room on the roof. Let's set a bed, a table, a chair, and a lampstand for him there. When he comes to us, he can stay there." One day he came there, and he went to the room and lay there. He said to Gehazi, his servant, "Call this Shunammite." When he had called her, she stood before him. He said to him, "Now say to her, Behold, you have cared for us with all this care. What is to be done for you? Would you like to be spoken for to the king or the captain of the army?" And she answered, "I dwell among my own people." He said, "What then is to be done for her?" Gehazi answered, "Most certainly she has no son, and her husband is old." He said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood in the door, and he said, "At this season next year you will embrace a son." She said, "No, my lord, you man of God, do not lie to your servant." The woman conceived and bore a son at that season when the time came around, as Elisha had said to her. When the child was grown, one day he went out to his father to the reapers. He said to his father, "My head, my head." He said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees until noon, and then he died. She went up and laid him on the man of God's bed, and shut the door on him, and went out. She called to her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come again." He said, "Why would you want to go to him today? It is not a new moon or a Sabbath." She said, "It's all right." Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, "Drive and go forward. Don't slow down for me unless I ask you to." So she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her afar off, he said to Gehazi, his servant, behold, there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and ask her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? She answered, it is well. When she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught hold of his feet. Gehazi came near to thrust her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and Yahweh has hidden it from me, and has not told me. And then she said, did I ask you for a son, my lord? Didn't I say, do not deceive me? And then he said to Gehazi, tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and go your way. If you meet any man, don't greet him, and if anyone greets you, don't answer him again. Then lay my staff on the child's face. The child's mother said, as Yahweh lives and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Gehazi went ahead of them and laid the staff on the child's face, but there was no voice and no hearing. Therefore he returned to meet him and told him, the child has not awakened. When Elisha had come into the house, behold, the child was dead and lying on his bed. He went in therefore and shut the door on both of them and prayed to Yahweh. He went up and lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth and his eyes on his eyes and his hands on his hands. He stretched himself on him, and the child's flesh grew warm. Then he returned and walked in the house once back and forth, and went up and stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. He called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite. So he called her. When she had come in to him, he said, take up your son. Then he went in, fell at his feet. Then she went in, fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground. And then she picked up her son and went out. Elisha came again to Gilgal. There was a famine in the land, and the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said to his servant, get the large pot and boil stew for the sons of the prophets. One went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered a lap full of wild gourds from it, and came and cut them up into a pot of stew, for they didn't recognize them. So they poured out for the man to eat. As they were eating some of the stew, they cried out and said, man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat it. But he said, then bring meal. He threw it into the pot, and he said, serve it to the people that they may eat. And there was nothing harmful in the pot. A man from Baal Shalishah came and brought the man of God some bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and fresh ears of grain in his sack. Elisha said, give to the people that they may eat. His servant said, what should I set before 100 men? But he said, give it to the people that they may eat, for Yahweh says, they will eat and will have some left over. So he set it before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to Yahweh's word. So there's just a little bit about Elisha, man of God. All right, Ezekiel chapter 42. Then he brought me out into the outer court, the way toward the north. Then he brought me into the room that was opposite the separate place, and which was opposite the building toward the north. Facing the length of 100 cubits was the door, and the width was 50 cubits. Opposite the 20 cubits which belonged to the inner court, and opposite the pavement which belonged to the outer court, was gallery against gallery in the 3 stories. Before the rooms was a walk of 10 cubits width inward, a way of 1 cubit, and their doors were toward the north. Now the upper rooms were shorter, for the galleries took away from these more than from the lower and the middle in the building. For they were in 3 stories, and they didn't have pillars as pillars of the courts. Therefore, the uppermost was set back more than the lowest, and the middle from the ground. The wall that was outside by the side of the rooms towards the outer court before the rooms was 50 cubits long. For the length of the rooms that were in the outer court was 50 cubits. Behold, those facing the temple were 100 cubits. From under these rooms was the entry on the east side, as one goes into them from the outer court. In the thickness of the wall of the court toward the east, before the separate place and before the building, there were rooms. The way before them was like the appearance of the rooms which were toward the north. Their length and width were the same. All their exits had the same arrangement and doors. Like the doors of the rooms that were toward the south was a door at the head of the way, even the way directly before the wall toward the east, as one enters into them. And then he said to me, the north rooms and the south rooms, which are opposite the separate place, are the holy rooms, where the priests who are near to Yahweh shall eat the most holy things. There they shall lay the most holy things with the meal offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering, for the place is holy. When the priests enter in, then they shall not go out of the holy place into the outer court until they lay their garments in which they minister there, for they are holy. Then they shall put on other garments, and shall approach that which is for the people. Now when he had finished measuring the inner house, he brought me out by the way of the gate, which faces toward the east, and measured it all around. He measured on the east side with the measuring reed 500 reeds, with the measuring reed all around. He measured on the north side 500 reeds, with the measuring reeds all around. He measured on the south side 500 reeds, with the measuring reed. He turned about to the west side and measured 500 reeds, with the measuring reed. He measured it on the 4 sides. It had a wall around it, the length 500 cubits, and the width 500 cubits, to make a separation between that which was holy and that which was common. All right, let's finish up James by reading James chapter 5. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming on you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be for a testimony against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up your treasure in the last days. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you have kept back by fraud, cry out. And the cries of those who reaped have entered into the ears of the Lord of the armies. You have lived in luxury on the earth, and have taken your pleasure. You have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter. You have condemned, and you have murdered the righteous one. He doesn't resist you. Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. Behold, the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient over it until it receives the early and late rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Don't grumble, brothers, against one another, so that you won't be judged. Behold, the judge stands at the door. Take, brothers, for an example of suffering and of perseverance, the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we call them blessed who endured. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and have seen the Lord in the outcome, and how the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. But above all things, my brothers, don't swear, not by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, so that you don't fall into hypocrisy. Is any among you suffering? Let him pray. Is any cheerful? Let him sing praises. Is any among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the assembly and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will heal him who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. If he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Confess your sins to one another and pray for one another, that you may be healed. The insistent prayer of a righteous person is powerfully effective. Elijah was a man of nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it didn't rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. He prayed again, and the sky gave rain, and the earth produced its fruits. Brothers, if any among you wanders from the truth, and someone turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way will save a soul from death, and will cover a multitude of sins. There is a lot there. James has a way of combining really important points in each chapter. So we'll just let you think about that. All right, let's close out the day. Psalm 145, verses 14 through 21. We're going to continue this praise psalm by David. Yahweh upholds all who fall and raises up all those who are bowed down. The eyes of all wait for you. You give them their food in due season. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. Yahweh is righteous in all his ways and gracious in all his works. Yahweh is near to all those who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. He will fulfill the desire of those who fear him. He also will hear their cry and will save them. Yahweh preserves all those who love him, but he will destroy all the wicked. My mouth will speak the praise of Yahweh. Let all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. I absolutely love that. You open your hand. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. He is so good. He is so good to us. All we have to do is reach out to him. All we have to do is have that relationship with him every single day. And while every single day won't be perfect, because we do have the world swirling all around us, if we just keep trying, folks, don't give up. Don't give up, ever. It's never too late to reach out to his open hand who wants us. He wants you and he wants me. And we just keep trying every single day. So with that, carry on today. Have the best day. And come on back for tomorrow, which will be day 288. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.